Born in the UK. And where do you live
19
now?
years ago. So I now live also in the UK. I moved there a year ago, and after living in South Africa for the past 8 years. So it's been a bit of both. I grew up in the UK, then moved to this church where I was living for 8 years, and am now back working in the UK.
So you were here with us for 8 years. I'm sure many of you got to know him then. Many of you will have particularly, maybe not by name, but have known of Joshua about 18 months ago when you were greatly in prayer. He got cerebral malaria, and many of us were praying for him at that time. So that puts Joshua in a bit of context, but you are here because you quite like Lego, don't you?
I do, just a bit.
Yeah. Anybody else here like Lego? Okay, yeah, good. So I've just got 3 quick questions for you. What's the first set you remember building?
Well, it's got to be the castle you gave me on my 5th birthday.
5th birthday, yeah. Big castle, yes, great set. Not really bought for him, bought for me. And what's the rarest piece of Lego that you've ever bought?
Well, I mean, I didn't buy it. You bought it for me as well. But it's a little goat piece that has become, it's about that big, but it's become very rare and pretty valuable now. So it's my rarest piece.
Okay, and so for that, how much would that go for if you?
That's about, a little goat is about £60. I can't remember the conversion.
£60. So that's we're talking 1,200 rand.
Yeah, something like that.
For one goat. Does it feature in any of your things that we'll see tonight?
I don't think it features in any of my ones tonight because I generally keep it in a little plastic bag away from anyone and anywhere else. But it might be in some of the Christmas stuff, but I can't remember. You'll have to see. If you spot a goat, let me know.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to hearing what you have to say. And over to Joshua.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. It's really exciting to be here and to just tell you a little bit about what I do, what Go Chatter does, and our ministry. Before I even get into the talk, I'm going to be showing you my first stop motion with Go Chatter, which is the Easter story, just to give those of you who maybe haven't seen any of our work just a bit of idea of what we do, the kind of things we're making. So if Humphrey, you could play the Easter story.
The Easter story begins on Palm Sunday. Jesus entered Jerusalem on a donkey. The crowds shouted, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." They waved palm branches and laid their cloaks on the ground. A few days later, Jesus and his disciples were sharing the Passover meal. Jesus predicted that one of them would betray him, and his disciples were shocked and saddened. Jesus broke the bread and said, "This is my body, broken for you." Then he took the wine and said, "This is my blood of the covenant, poured out for many." Jesus said to Peter, "Before the cock will crows this very night, you will disown me 3 times." But Peter insisted, "I am willing to die with you, Jesus. I will never disown you." Jesus and his disciples went out to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus asked his disciples to keep watch while he prayed. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then Judas came to betray Jesus to the Jewish leaders. Jesus was arrested and the disciples ran away. The Jewish leaders put Jesus on trial before the high priest. Even though Jesus was innocent, he didn't defend himself from the false accusations made against him. When the high priest asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah?" Jesus answered, "I am." Then the high priest condemned Jesus to death and beat him. While Jesus was on trial, Peter was in the courtyard below. 3 times people asked Peter if he knew Jesus, but 3 times, Peter denied knowing him. Then the cockerel crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said, and he wept. Jesus was then taken to Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate knew Jesus was innocent, but the crowd shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And Pilate was afraid. So Pilate let Barabbas, a murderer, go free instead of Jesus. They dressed Jesus in a purple robe and a crown of thorns. Jesus was crucified on Good Friday with a thief either side of him. At 12 o'clock, in the middle of the day, darkness came over the whole land for 3 hours. Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then he breathed his last. When the Roman centurion saw how Jesus died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." After Jesus died, his body was placed in a tomb, and a heavy stone was rolled across the entrance. When the Sabbath was over, Mary and the women came early on Sunday morning to anoint Jesus' body, according to the Jewish custom. But when they got there, the stone had been rolled away, and the tomb was empty. An angel told them the good news. Jesus is not here, he has risen from the dead.
So there you go. That was my first Lego Bible story stop motion that I made almost 2 years ago to this day. That was the first one I made with Go Chatter. And in this talk, I'm just going to be telling you a bit about the story basically behind that stop motion and all the other ones we've made this year and plan to make in the future, where we will be going. There we go, the slides are working. So yeah, we'll just be starting off with a bit of the beginnings. The beginnings of Go Chatter, how Go Chatter as a company came about and how I joined Go Chatter. Then I'll talk about Lego stop motion, how that works, how the video that you saw is actually made, the process behind that. And then we'll talk about the ministry of Go Chatter, what Go Chatter is doing and how we are impacting the world around us, and then the future, where we hope to go in the future and what our plans for over the coming years. So, Go Chatter. Go Chatter is a Christian media ministry that was set up about 6 or 7 years ago now by a guy called Dan Rackham, who I now work for. He set it up as a way of reaching out to church communities around him, particularly in the UK, as he was based in the UK at the time, to serve them with video content, with content that they can, visual content that they could use in churches and in Sunday school, kids' church services, in school assemblies, in a wide range of things. On our website to date, we have over 700 videos on the website of a huge range of topics and themes from all seasons, all of the key Christian points in the year, and they're made by a range of over 90 different content creators. So Go Chatter, we make a lot of original content ourselves, but one of the other things we do is we reach out to content creators around the UK and around the world, asking them to they'll make a video and then we'll post it on their website, on our website, and that's a way of collaborating with those around us, helping them get their content out to churches, and also supporting our ministry. We also post all our stuff to social medias, so we're relatively active on social media, and our videos will go out on YouTube, on Instagram, and that's another way of reaching those around us. So yeah, as I said, one of the main ways that Go Chatter operates is through collaborations, And we have a page on our website where people can submit videos. If they've made a Christian video, they can submit it to the website, and it will be uploaded to the website. But one thing that my boss Dan is very good at doing is he is very good at networking and reaching out to those around him, people he's in contact with, people he knows of or his friends know of, and asking them to do collaborations with him with Go Chatter. And that's where I came in 2 years ago. He reached out to me and he asked me to make the Easter video with him. But before I get into that, I'll just go back in time a bit to how I even got into Lego in the first place, because Lego isn't the most usual hobby for a teenager to be into, especially in their later teen years. So there we go. There's me, been into Lego since I was 5, since I got that first castle set. I'm very relieved that I didn't quite get involved in the police costume that my parents gave me at the same time. But yeah, so I've been building Lego for, well, my whole life now, and over the years I've been doing more and more and more of it. As I've got older, I've been doing different things, entering competitions over the past 5 years. Since I was 6 years, since I was 13, I was able to enter competitions online, and that's where I really started developing my skills, because I'm quite a competitive person. So having people to build against and a potential prize at the end was something that really helped me develop my skills in Lego and really push my boundaries. So I've been doing a lot of that over the past 6 years or so, and that in terms of Lego was the main part of my hobby, was building models like these. Got a variety up on the screen here, and yeah, building just static models was the main thing I was into. I wasn't so much into stop motion. That for me took a lot of time and a lot of energy, and I didn't have the motivation to do it really. I did try occasionally. So this next slide, Humphrey, if you could play that video. This is one of my earliest stop motions from about 6 years ago, and as you can probably see, the quality difference is, well, at least in my eyes, is very, very different to the stuff I'm making now. But that was just something that I tried out about 6 years ago. I thought, well, I enjoy Lego, why not try making a movie out of it? I'd seen lots of stop motion stuff on YouTube, and I did that. It took so long. It takes so much work to make. Like, that was 4 seconds, but it probably took me about 4 hours to do that. And when you're 14 or so, that's a long time to do not very much. So I didn't really have the motivation back then. And then this next video, this I made in 2020. So this was my first Christian video that I made in 2020 at the beginning of lockdown. It was just before Easter, and lockdown had just started, and everyone was trying out new things. And I thought, well, I've done some of my own stop motions in the past, so why not try making a Lego Bible story that the church can then use. I can't remember whether this was ever used in church, but I made it anyway. And I made, over the course of lockdown, I made a few more of these videos, because I think my mum asked me to make a few for Sunday school, and other people asked me to make some for various things, but they didn't really get a huge amount of reach. So this was a YouTube channel that I set up to post these videos, and yeah, I made 6 in total over the course of about a year, and they were a huge amount of work, but they were only really shown in this church during lockdown. And yeah, as I said, it requires a lot of motivation to create a full stop motion. So when the work was only being shown to probably about 20 people, getting about 20 views on YouTube, it didn't really motivate me to do much more of it. So after lockdown ended, I kind of went back into building my usual models, my castles and my animals and birds and so on. But then at the end of 2021, Dan Rackham, he found this YouTube channel through a second cousin that was working for Go Chatter at the time, and my mum had sent my mum had sent this YouTube channel to my second cousin. My second cousin showed it to Dan, and Dan reached out to me. And so we called at the end of December 2021, and he asked me whether I wanted to try any more of this, whether I wanted to make an Easter stop motion with them. And then they would post it on their YouTube. They'd send it out to churches to use, and that got me really excited, because suddenly from a YouTube channel where my videos are getting about 20 views, the stop motion would be reaching out to hundreds, maybe even thousands of churches around the UK and even around the world. So that got me really motivated, and my Easter stop motion, I made it over, it took me about 2 months to make. I was doing school at the time as well, but over those 2 months I put a huge amount of effort into that stop motion, because suddenly I was doing this for a real purpose, and I had the motivation. So over those 2 months, I put crazy amounts of work into it. My mum was getting very stressed because I was not concentrating on school as well as I should. But I finished it, and it got put out that Easter, so Easter 2022, and it was that Easter. It was shown in over 1,000 churches around the UK, and it went down really. It was one of Go Chatter's most popular videos for the past about 5 years. So obviously I was really excited about that, but Go Chatter was also really excited about that, because from their perspective, they'd stumbled across this new content that was doing really well and was really engaging people, and churches were really wanting to use. They were buying this video in the hundreds. So Go Chatter, after I made the Easter stop motion, Go Chatter said to me, I had mentioned that this was my last year of school and I wasn't sure what to do next. So they said to me, hey, why don't you come out on a gap year and work for us for a year? So I thought about it for about 2 seconds and said yes. Because, I mean, yeah, it was just such an incredible opportunity for me, because I've had my passion for Lego for my whole life now, and to be able to use something like Lego, which is not something that you'd immediately think of to use, that God can use. I mean, God can use anything, but Lego. And I remember thinking, when after a Sunday school lesson when I was 8 or something, I can't remember what the passage had been on, but they were talking about using your talents for God and using your skills for God. And I was wondering, how on earth do I use building Lego castles for God? I thought, maybe I can build a church building out of Lego one day, which obviously wasn't particularly feasible. And I had absolutely no clue that one day God would be using the Lego. He would be using the Lego for his glory. So it was an opportunity that I absolutely jumped upon, because I realized this once in a lifetime. I've always wanted to do something Lego related for a job, but have never seen that to be particularly feasible, because to become a Lego designer you have to move to Denmark, and it can be harder to become a Lego designer than it can be to become a professional football player. So that was never particularly feasible. So I never really considered doing something Lego related for my full-time job. But when this opportunity came along, I couldn't help but grab it up. So the Easter one was the first one I made, and then after they'd offered me the job, they said, "Is Christmas coming up? Do you want to make a Christmas story for us?" And that can be a way of fundraising for your gap year. So I made the Christmas story for Christmas that year, 2022. So that'd be Christmas last year, or the year before, and that one I was making while recovering from malaria, and finishing my finals. So it was quite a stretch to actually complete that one, and it's not one personally I'm very proud of the quality, but it was helpful just to make it, and then I had something that Go Chatter could show people to help fundraise for the gap year and help bring in funds, because Go Chatter is not a particularly well-funded company, especially at the moment. So that's me and Go Chatter. So I joined Go Chatter officially at the beginning of last year, January the 28th or something like that is when I arrived and started work for Go Chatter. And over the course of the past year, we've made five more stop motions together. So we started with the Good Samaritan, then went on to David and Goliath, the Paralyzed Man, and our latest one that's out is Jonah. And there's one blank mystery slide that is the raising of Lazarus. So not particularly a secret, but the video isn't out yet. I completed it just before coming out to South Africa. But we didn't have time to get it out, and December isn't a great time to post anyway. So that one will be coming out probably sometime next month. Five stop motions throughout the year. We had originally planned 6 for the year, but that didn't turn out to be very feasible because none of us really knew what we were doing. It was very new. I'd only done 2 so far, and I was still quite new at stop motion. It wasn't something I was massively experienced in, and Go Chatter they'd done a lot of different styles of animation, but not a lot of stop motion before. So it was a very new experience for the whole team, so we'd planned 6. We've only managed to get out 4 and make 5 throughout the year. When we decided on the 6 at the start of the year, we decided on a range. So if you look, you can see that we've alternated from New Testament to Old Testament to New Testament, and so on. And that pattern will probably be continuing, certainly for next year. And we also wanted a range of characters and stories from throughout the Bible. So we didn't want to just make stories from Jesus' life, or just make the interesting stories from Genesis and Judges and so on. We wanted a good range that people could look at and watch and get an idea, especially because we were starting out. We wanted a range of things that people could watch, so that they could see the kind of things we could do, and then ask for specific Bible stories. So, but over the past year, we haven't just been making Bible stories. There's been a lot of other things that we've been doing throughout the year, many of which I'll cover a bit later on in the talk. But we've been doing a lot of other talks like this. We've gone into schools. We've made or are in the process of making a Christmas story book, and hopefully more. And then we've also been doing a lot of social media related stuff, and tutorials on animation and so on, and growing our YouTube channel. So and those are all things I'll be covering a bit more later on in the talk. But it's been a very varied year. It's not just been stop motion grind, although for the most part, it has been stop motion grind, but there's been a lot of other things that we've been doing and a lot of things that we're expanding into and hoping to do more of in the future. So now I'm just going to take you through the process of making an animation. So how, for example, the Easter story, which was shown, how something like that is made, because it's a long process. It takes 2.5 months to make a single 3 to 4 minute animation, and it's a team of 3 of us that are making the animations. So we have our script writer who writes the scripts and then does the voiceovers. So the script for the Easter story and the voiceover was done by a script writer, and then I do the set design, the setup, and the animation. So that's all the Lego related stuff basically. And then we have another guy who does the editing, and that involves putting the videos together and adding the voiceover, adding the sound effects. And finally, there's promotion, which the whole team does. We'll all post to our own social media channels and Go Chatter's social media channels. And that's because we're a small team of 3 at the moment. We don't have someone that's solely employed to do social media. We all share bits of that. So the script writing. So our scripts are written by a lady called Rachel Hood. She's very, very skilled poet. All our scripts are done in rhyming couplets, and they're about between 2 and 4 minutes long. Some of the stories are shorter, some of the stories are longer. She'll send me over drafts of the script probably 2 or 3 months before I even start the animation, and I will look through those scripts, see if there's anything that would be impossible to do in animation. So there's some things, for example, in the story of Jonah, which was our latest animation, in the original script, she'd put in something about the worm that chewed up the plant that was covering up Jonah towards the end. And obviously there's no worm pieces in Lego, and especially none that are small enough to chew an equally tiny Lego plant. So it's small things like that unless you know what is possible with Lego and unless you know what is possible with animation, it's tricky to know that it's not possible. So it's small things like that I'll go back and ask, hey, can you change this? Can you change that? And then once we have the final draft of the script, I'll go through the script. She'll do a voiceover. I'll go through and do timings for each half of the couplet, and then I'll plan out what I'll do for each scene of each couplet, because in general each couplet will be a different clip, a different scene, so that it kind of matches up, and it just makes it a lot easier to plan as well. So you can see on the right there, that's my planning script, and that has each of the couplets in a box and then a little blurb what I'm going to do, and then the color indicates the scene. So I'll plan out the different scenes that I need to build, because often there's quite a range of scenes, but sometimes there's only a few, but you don't want to build too many scenes. So I try to limit the general scenes. So for example, in Jonah, there's the ocean scenes, there's the Nineveh scenes, there's some just town scenes where he's getting on the boat, but you don't want to do too many different scenes, because the more different scenes you have, the more setup and more build time that takes. So once I figured out what scenes I need to build, I get on to set design. You can see here some of the office setup we have. Those drawers are all filled to the brim with Lego, meticulously sorted into part and color. It takes a long time to sort, but it definitely speeds up the building process. I'm someone who builds just from a picture in my brain. So I don't draw out the sets particularly. I'm not very good at doing extensive planning. So it's just I have a picture in my mind what I want to build, and then I'll just build it. We will buy buy bricks off an online website that you can buy individual Lego parts from. And because I've been growing my collection for years and years, and have been sorting it as well, I have a very good idea of what parts and what quantities of parts I have in my collection. So if I think that I'm not going to have enough parts of a specific color or a specific type of brick for a build that I'm doing, before I start the build, I'll go on and I'll order some of those parts just to stock up and make sure that I have enough of the parts before I start building. And so at the start of the year, because when I arrived, I knew I was going to be making at least I thought at the time 6 animations, but it turned out to be 5. But I was going to be making a good number of animations throughout the year, and building all these sets would take up quite a big chunk of time. So what I did what I did to save a lot of time throughout the course of the year was I built this massive set over about 2 weeks. So this thing was about 2 weeks' work. It's about 2 meters wide, so roughly this kind of size, lengthwise, and that the mountain is that kind of height. So it's absolutely enormous, and about 20,000 bricks or so. But my idea was that because this is quite a general scene, it's nothing specific, but it's very Israelite. The landscape is Israeli landscape, Palestinian landscape, and the towns are based off first century Israelite homes and synagogues. I did a lot of research into the landscape in the area and into the architectural styles and the housing styles and the kind of culture. So what they would include in a village, what it might look like in a village, to try and make it as accurate as possible. Even though it's Lego bricks, it's never going to be fully accurate. But I like to try and make things realistic as possible within the parameters of Lego. So this set has been incredibly useful for me throughout the year. And if you go back and if you look through many of our videos over this year, you'll see different bits of this set in different bits of the video. And because I made it with the intention of not using it as a single set, but using it for many different videos, I made it modular. So that thing, it splits into 8 separate sections, and you can rearrange them, you can move them around and create different scenes from them. And it's meant that town, I used it for the start of my first stop motion for the Good Samaritan as probably Capernaum or something like that, as an Israelite town during the time of the Romans. And I mean, it worked very well for that. That's what I first built the details for, because that was my first stop motion. But then in my latest one, in Jonah, for Nineveh, which is the main city and town that features in that story, I used exactly the same buildings, but by simply changing some of the details, by removing the palm trees and the greenery and basically anything colourful, you can create a completely different look from exactly the same scene, basically. And if you look at those 2 videos, you'd barely notice that it's the same buildings. So that's the general set that I made to use in all my stop motions. But in each one, there's still specific scenes and specific things that I have to build for the animation. So these are a couple of the things that I had to build for Jonah. Jonah was one that there was quite a lot of things that I had to build specifically for that project, because there's a lot of very unique scenes in Jonah and scenes that you don't get really elsewhere in any of our stories. So there's some boats there that I used for the stormy scenes and the scenes on the sea. And then in the bottom corner, that's a micro scale version of Nineveh. So there was some wide angle shots that showed the whole of Nineveh, and that's where I used a micro scale one so that I don't have to build an absolutely enormous minifigure scale one. And then the close-up ones with the minifigures was where I used the set in the previous slide, where I used houses from that, which are built to minifigure scale. Once I've built all of the sets, I'll do that first. I'll build all of the sets first, and once I've built the sets, it's then on to setting up the scenes. And the setup and animation, so animation's next, setup and animation kind of go hand in hand. I'll set up one scene and then animate it, and then set up the next scene and then animate it. Setup can take a long time, especially for a new scene. So if it's a new scene I'm doing, making sure I get the lighting right, getting the right mood for the scene. So you can see in the middle there, those are the underwater shots for my Jonah video, and making sure the lighting was coming from the right angle and it looked like it was underwater as well was very, very complicated. And in contrast, on the right, you've got some scenes from inside Nineveh towards the end of the Jonah video. And that's a very different mood. It's very, very orange, very dusty looking, very dirty. And it takes a while to get the theme right for each of the different scenes. But once you've got that, then each of the clips, so there might be for Jonah there was about 9 scenes, and then each scene would probably have between 2 to 10 clips, and each of the clips it's a lot quicker to set up each of the clips. So I'll do my animation by scene rather than chronological. So I'll do all of Nineveh, and then all of the underwater shots for Jonah, and then all of the storm shots for Jonah, for example. And once each scene is set up, it's onto animation. This is definitely the biggest chunk of the whole work process. On average, it takes half an hour to animate 1 second of footage. So that doesn't include any of the setup time. That's not including the script writing or anything. It's just simply for the process of animating, it takes half an hour to animate 1 second of footage. I animate at 12 frames per second. So for each second of a video, you see I've created 12 individual frames. And so a frame is, so there is one of the frames from my Paralyzed Man video. And in each frame, you've got to make tiny adjustments to each of the characters, all of the moving parts of the scene. So that's one frame from the video. And then if it will move on, that's the next frame. And you can see there's barely any movement between the 2 frames. But it's tiny movements, but a lot of tiny movements. So all of the hands of the characters moving ever so slightly, all of the legs moving ever so slightly. And on this one, the camera is zooming in as well. So I have the camera on a little track, and there's markings on the track, so I'll move it along the track 1 millimeter at a time. So there's all these things that I have to remember while I'm animating, and have to make sure I don't forget, make sure I don't knock over a character or whatever, because otherwise you just have to start again. So that's a long process, and this final clip was about 5 seconds long, which means it would probably have taken me about 3 hours to animate that clip. And that's the final clip from the video. And you can see that once you put all those frames together, it creates a really smooth motion, even though when you look at just the 2 frames, so if I go back, if you look at just these 2, then it can look quite jerky and like there's a lot of movement. But when you put them together, because your eye can't really see more than that, and especially at 12 frames per second, it looks very smooth. So, and then yeah, for when I'm just animating one character, it can be quite simple. I've only got one character to remember, one character to animate. I've only got his 2 legs and his 2 arms and hands and his head to think about. But when you get onto a scene like at the beginning of the Easter story, where there is about 30 characters in that scene, it can be a huge amount more work. So the half an hour for every second is very much just an average. Something like this shot would have probably been a lot quicker, but something like the Easter shot, it can take up. I think this clip was probably about, I think it was 6 seconds long in the final video, and that took me about 8 hours to film, and that's 8 hours solid because I can't take a break because the lighting might have changed by the next morning, or the characters might have shifted, or the camera might have shifted. It's just too much risk. So it's 8 hours solid of filming. It has meant that there have been quite a few times over the past year where I've ended up working a bit later than is probably healthy. But you do get, I do get very absorbed in the animation, and it's a process that I enjoy, or have come to enjoy. And then just the last thing about animation is we use a software called Dragon Frame, which means that I don't have to touch the camera at all. Because if you touch the camera, if you touch the set, accidentally knock either one, then you're going to have to restart, because otherwise it's going to look like an earthquake is happening during the scene. So we use this software called Dragon Frame. It comes with a little controller, and it means you can completely operate the camera without even touching it at all. So the camera is just set up, sitting there, and then I will be operating it from the computer. And then once the animations are complete, I'll upload them to our Google Drive and send them off to our editor, who puts them together. This process probably takes about 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of the animation. And what he'll do is he'll take the clips, he'll put them together, match them to the voiceover, and then add the sound effects and the music tracks, and just the little bits of editing that you probably can't spot but make a huge difference to the final product. And finally, promotion. This is arguably one of the most important parts of the whole process, because if we don't promote our content, then nobody's going to see it, and it's all been in vain. So, and I'm partly emphasizing that because it's something that we can get a lot better at. It's not something we've been great at this past year, and certainly something we need to improve at and are looking at improving over the coming years. But after each video is out, we will put a lot of effort into posting clips of it onto our social media channels and just promoting it as much as possible, and then sending it out. We have an emailing list of about 6,000 churches that will send out each of our new videos to, in the hopes that they'll use it in their services. And yeah, so that leads me on to the ministry of Go Chatter. So what are we doing with these videos? How are they being used? And what is the purpose of them, really? So for the longest time, Go Chatter has been solely serving churches. That has been their main mission, is just to serve churches, just to serve church communities, and with video content, as I mentioned, with visual content that they can use in services, in school assemblies, in their local communities. And that has been their main mission for the past 7 years or so. One of our key things and our key focuses, as with hopefully every Christian ministry, is that our content is all very much Christ-centered content. So there's a lot of videos out on YouTube. Basically all of the Bible stories we make, they've been done before. They've been done in Lego stop motion before. They've been done in hundreds of different ways. But one thing that makes our content stand out a bit more from the majority of videos out on the internet is that all of our videos center and point back to Christ. So even something like David and Goliath or Jonah, where Jesus doesn't even appear in the story, our scriptwriter Rachel will still point the message of the story back to Jesus, back to the gospel, and that's something that really makes our videos stand out, and means that churches are more likely to want to use them, and they're more useful for churches, more useful for ministries. But that's not the only thing we've been doing, and it's not the only thing that we hope to do over the future. There's a lot of ministries that we've been expanding into, especially over the past year. The Lego content has really opened up a lot of opportunities for us, because it really catches people's attention, and we've had a lot of other Christian ministries get very excited about it and want to do collaborations with us. And one of the things that we've had on our hearts recently, and have been realizing more and more over the past year, is reaching this new generation, this new scrolling generation, this new social media generation. And I mean, I looked up just before starting this talk, and on average, people spend 2.5 hours on social media every day. And when people are spending that much on social media, I think, sure, as Christians, we can see that it's not a great idea to be spending that much time on social media, and it can easily become an idol. But if we all withdraw from social media, then it's going to become a very, very dark place. And as Christians, we aren't meant to withdraw into our own little bubbles. We're meant to be shining lights to those around us, and that includes the world of social media. So that is something that we've been very much trying to do over the past year, and hope to do even more of in the coming years, is be a shining light on social media, on the internet world. And we will still be serving churches with content, with Christian content, but we also want to take the evangelism a bit into part of our own ministry, so that we're directly part of the evangelism, and getting the content out there ourselves. And that idea partly came about this year, through my social media channel. This is the channel that I've had for probably about 5 years now, where I've been posting a lot of those pictures I showed earlier on of my Lego castles, my Lego birds, and so on. But at the beginning of this year, when starting this job, I decided, well, this is the Lego stuff I'm making, so why not just switch to posting my Christian content on my social media? And I switched to doing that in February. I had about 2,000 followers at the time, and have since grown to over 30,000 followers in the last year. And that really sparked me thinking, was that if I can do this was my personal channel, but if I can do this on my personal channel, then we can very well do this on Go Chatter. If we can start getting this kind of growth on Go Chatter, then it can be an incredible tool for not only evangelism, but for our ministry as well, and reaching out to more people, reaching out to more churches, and reaching out to more countries. One of the amazing things I noticed when I was at that spike of growing early September or something, was that one of my biggest following groups was from Iran, which is one of the top 10 persecuted countries in the world. But for some reason, it was my top followed city. So the Instagram analytics breaks it down into cities, and my top 2 followed cities at the time were and still are in Iran, which which is crazy because I mean Christianity is persecuted there, but somehow it was reaching into those countries, and so that was the other thing about realizing this, was that at the moment in our serving churches, we are only catering to our UK audience. Our 6,000 church emailing list is almost entirely UK based, and by expanding to doing more social media, we can be getting a huge reach from across the globe, and we can be expanding into countries that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to reach at all. And I mean, on top of this, while I was growing, there was a lot of people reaching out to me to ask to translate the videos into Portuguese, into Spanish, into South Korean, into a huge number of languages. So this is something that it really excited us and really sparked our thinking, was that if we can start doing more of this, then we can make Go Chatter so much more than just serving churches, which is a great thing. But if we can be doing more of this and filling a void that is maybe not filled as much as it could be, there's not a huge amount of online Christian content that is engaging and tailored towards a slightly younger generation. So this was something that we really felt called to be doing more of, and it's something that over the coming years we will be really focusing on. But there's been even more stuff that we've been doing over the past year. I mentioned earlier going into schools. This was from a day back in, I think August or something, when I went into school and taught animation to the school kids, because it was on their curriculum, but because I was coming from a Christian media ministry, it meant that I could also show my Bible videos. So we showed the Good Samaritan and David and Goliath to start off each session with each school group, and then would go from that into the animation. But it meant that we were getting Christian content into schools and showing it to all these kids. So again, that's another amazing way to reach a new generation, to reach a younger generation with stuff that they can really engage with and really get excited by, because they absolutely loved making their own stop motions. It was something that they really, really enjoyed. And so yeah, if we can be doing more of that, then it's just a great way to engage more people. And then another great thing that we kind of stumbled upon towards the end of this year was our Christmas story trails. I'm not sure if they're still up in the church, but they've been up for the past few weeks over Christmas. But this was a product that we developed probably late October, originally for a toy store chain. You can see one of the pictures of them up in the toy store chain, and they asked us to create a trail that told the Christmas story over a few posters, and we found this augmented reality software that meant that you can scan a QR code on your phone, and then the little box with a picture on the poster basically comes to life and starts playing a clip from our Christmas story, and this has proved a very, very popular product this Christmas. So as it says there, there's been over 400 trails up around the UK this Christmas, and this is the first time we've released it. And each of those is up, like over half of them are up in toys in one of the most well-known toy stores, The Entertainer in the UK. There's over 200 stores across the United Kingdom, and then another 200 are from churches that have brought the trail and put them up in their local communities and their local churches. So this has been another another way again of reaching a new generation, in engaging people in Christ-centered content, in Christian content, but yeah, in an engaging way, in a way that's fun and new and different. And we've also been doing a lot more collaborations over the past year. Collaborated with the likes of Hope, which is a Christian magazine. They have done articles about the work, and then we've also collaborated with a Good Book Company to make the Christmas storybook, which is coming out next year, and hope to be making even more of these. And we've also had really exciting opportunities with even The Chosen. So I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of The Chosen, which is at the moment one of the biggest TV series in the world. But it's the story of Jesus, the story of his disciples. And while my social media was getting a lot of attention, The Chosen also stumbled upon it, and they reached out to us to ask whether we wanted to collaborate. So that is still in the works. We don't know at the moment what will come of it, but there's been a lot of very exciting opportunities like this that will hopefully lead to even more opportunities in the coming years. And so the future of Go Chatter, where do we hope to go? I mean, I've already covered a lot of these ideas as stuff that it's very new. We're still in this first year of making Lego animations, and while Go Chatter has been going for 7 years now, we're in the first year of making this Lego stuff, and we're very much switching to being just Lego related content now, because it is our most popular, and we're a small team, so we can't really afford to be making lots of different styles of content. So yeah, it's something that we're very much switching to, and we're hoping to grow the team with the idea of making more Lego animations in mind. So we've got an intern joining this January. Joins on the 22nd, so next Monday, and we hope that over the coming years we'll expand the team even more. Have dreams of a team of 10, 20 animators in the future, working on these Bible animations to the point where hopefully one day we'll be able to create an entire children's Bible with Lego stop motion, and then also just following through on a lot of these collaboration opportunities, a lot of these all these social media ideas, and these ways of reaching new generations, of reaching new people in an engaging way. Another key thing about our future and about growing is funding. We are at the moment not the most well-funded ministry, and that's something that you can definitely be praying for, is being able to find the right people to fund us. At the moment, we're not a sustainable ministry, so the content we make doesn't cover the expenses to make it, and we rely on funds from Christian grants and Christian fund organizations basically to operate. So one thing we hope to get to a stage where our ministry is sustainable in the future, and where the content we're making is bringing in the income to sustain us. And one of the ways we're hoping to do that is through social media, through ad revenue, but that requires a lot of growth, which we don't have yet. But yeah, funding is definitely something that you can be praying for. So that brings me pretty much to the end. As I said, we're in a very exciting position as a ministry at the moment, where we've got a lot on our horizon. We don't know what's going to happen in the coming years, We don't know where we're going to go. There's been so many changes over this past year alone. And as just before I left to come back to South Africa, my boss Dan was telling me that he feels like he's been rolling the ball of Go Chatter up a hill for the past 7 years, and he's finally reached the top of the hill. And it's not long now before we start picking up speed and not going downhill, but but picking up speed and starting growing the ministry even more. So we're at a very exciting stage, and obviously because it's been being grown around the Lego, that's very exciting for me, because that means even more opportunity to play with Lego, and train others up to play with Lego as well, but play with Lego for the Lord. So now going to show our latest video that's released, Jonah, and so you can be watching that with what has been said in mind, with an idea of the effort that goes into an animation like that. And then after that there'll be a short time for questions and answers, and then I promise I'll shut up about Lego. But Humphrey, if you could play Jonah now.
The people of Nineveh weren't very nice. They were violent and vicious, to be quite precise. God told Jonah, a prophet, to warn them to change. But would God forgive them? That filled Jonah with rage. He just didn't trust that God knew what was best, so he boarded a boat that would take him out west. But because he was running from what God had warned, God sent a fearsome and furious storm. The sailors were shaken and deeply afraid, and they prayed to their gods that they all would be saved. They tried what they could, all while Jonah just slept, but then woke him for fear that they soon would be wrecked. Jonah knew what he'd done, and to save them from harm, said, "Throw me in the sea, and the storm will be calm." And the moment that Jonah was thrown in the sea, God stilled the storm, and the sailors believed. But what happened next, Jonah wouldn't have wished. For to stop him from sinking, God sent a big fish. It swallowed him whole, right down deep to its belly. Things were desperate and dark and incredibly smelly. And finally, Jonah decided to pray. He remembered that God is the one who can save. He stayed in the fish for 3 days and 3 nights, till it spat him back out, which was not a nice sight. He was grubby and gunky, but clearly not dead, and decided that this time he'd do what God said. He went and warned Nineveh, slightly postponed. In 40 more days you'll be overthrown. And the way they responded, he'd never have guessed. They said sorry to God and were deeply distressed. They stopped doing evil and saw God could save. And so all they'd done wrong, God just freely forgave. But Jonah was fuming. This twist seemed all wrong. This is the problem I've had all along. You're a kind and compassionate God, Jonah spat. But it's wrong to forgive evil people like that. As he sat there and sulked, God grew Jonah a shelter. He was pleased at the plant which was stopping him swelter. But God made it wither and said, "That's just shade. So shouldn't I care for the people I've made?" Jonah hated how God forgave people like them. although he'd been forgiven again and again. We all need forgiveness. So God sent the one who said someone far greater than Jonah has come. And when he saw a city of evil, he cried. And to bring them forgiveness, he willingly died. Jesus, like Jonah, went down to the depths to free and forgive us, to save us from death.
There you go. Yeah, so that is our latest video that's out on the website, out on the channel, of hopefully many more over the coming years. So if you've got any questions about that video, about any of our other videos, about how they're made, I see a hand has shot up already. Yes.
I'm so curious to know.
So the facial expressions, a lot of animators will edit facial expressions on, but I limit myself to just facial expressions that come with Lego heads. So I'll spend a lot of time sifting through this online website called Bricklink, where we buy all our parts. They have every Lego part that's ever been produced there. But I'll spend a lot of time looking through and trying to find the expressions that match the emotions I need to convey during the story. So that's actually one of the first things I do during the build phase and script writing phase, is I'll have a think about what emotions each character will need to portray throughout the video, because the expressions are limited, especially as I'm using realistic skin tones, of which there are not very many faces available in the Lego palette. So I will choose my characters, and I'll choose their faces based on what expressions I have, and then there's often faces that look similar, and you can swap out the heads for different expressions, or they have a face on each side of the head, so you can turn around the head for a different expression. And there'll be ones like for Jesus, I always have Jesus or the main character of most of my stop motions. There's a lot of faces that have a simple stubble beard, and then you can get a lot of expressions that look very similar. They're not exactly the same, but when they're shown in quick succession, you don't notice. So that's how I do the expressions. Yes.
God is a very forgiving God.
Yes.
His forgiveness is conditional. It's highly conditional.
Mm-hmm.
And his forgiveness is conditional on this. The most confession and restitution.
Mm-hmm.
God will not forgive you unless you. What is the difference between that wicked city and a honest? Nineveh repented. Does he honest repented? No. Does he God judging unhonest? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Any other questions? Yes, Ian. Sadly not. So the Lego company has a non-religion policy, so they will not do anything that's associated. They put religion and politics and war all in the same categories, and they will not do anything that's associated with any of them. So yeah, sadly they don't sponsor us, and then they're not interested in our content in any ways. But there's many other outlets and many other large ministries and companies that are interested in what we're doing, but sadly not the Lego Group.
And would they
So I can get around that in other ways, because I'm part of other online Lego groups. So I can use my membership with those groups to get parts at discount from Lego, because Lego recognizes those groups. But then I can use those parts for work. But I just can't. Lego would not supply our ministry with work because they don't associate with anything religious. Yes.
Is that more
So when I moved out at the beginning of last year, I brought a huge amount of my Lego with me. So yeah, so I brought out probably about 60,000 bricks from my collection, and that has kind of been the base of what we've used over the past year. But then we've had to buy a lot of specific bricks. So we've spent about 2,000 something pounds on Lego in the past year, and as you can see, a lot of the scenes they're very sandy. They've got a very brown tan color palette. So and I didn't have a huge amount, especially not in the quantities we've been using them. So we've had to buy a lot of those kind of parts, and again the facial expressions and the specific parts I need for each of the animations. But the base collection was mine, but then the camera equipment and stuff is Go Chatter's. So Sean. Mm.
What are
Yeah.
your thoughts around it? Language barriers
Mm-hmm.
and targeting other programs?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean the great thing about the social media content I was posting was that there was no voiceover. So it was just clips of the Bible scenes without any voiceover. And I mean a lot of the ones that were doing really well were really obvious ones, like the paralyzed man on his mat getting lowered down to Jesus. So a lot of those are kind of self-explanatory, and also what does well on Instagram is 3-4 second long clips, so it's not a lot. So those are the things that were getting traction in places like Iran. But in terms of overcoming language barriers, it is something that is tricky, because sure, it's one thing to translate the video and find someone to translate it into, say, Portuguese or Spanish or whatever, or South Korean, but for them to then actually be able and have the means to get that out to church communities in that area is a very different matter. And it would, at the moment, as a ministry, we're not in the place where we can ourselves be spending the time to translate the videos into 20 other languages. So we would need to find partners in the other countries to do that work for us. But finding those people is very tricky. So I'm sure the Lord will bring people across our paths over the years, but we're kind of just waiting for those opportunities, because especially at the moment, our team being so small, we've all got a lot on our plates, so we don't have a huge amount of time on our hands. But yeah, it's definitely something we will be working on more in the future. Very. Yeah. So I had a very old DSLR camera that my parents had given me just when I was getting into stop motion. I think it's the first DSLR camera ever made, so very old. But that was what I used for the Easter story and the Christmas story, and it served me perfectly well for both of those. I've now got used to a lot better equipment, so I'd struggle going back to using those. But yeah, I mean, especially while I was in South Africa, I got very good at just using what I had on hand to do the best I could with what I had. For the tracks, I made my own tracks out of Lego. So for the Easter story, there's the one scene where it pans around the cross, and I made a circular track out of Lego, and then just pushed the camera up against that track and moved it around a frame at a time. And now I have professional slider dollies and so on, which makes it a lot easier. But doing stuff like that, especially early on, and finding ways to improvise and use what I had to create all these cool effects was, I mean, that's the thing I love and still do love about the animation process. And there's still plenty of stuff like that in Jonah, for example, figuring out how to make the waves and make the underwater shots look like they were underwater is the problem solving aspect to stop motion that I really enjoy. I think there was another question. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah, yeah. So in the Easter story, I think that it was particularly prominent. Yeah, and that again was one of those things I had to figure out early on with not a lot of equipment. And again, in my stop motions, I like to, as far as possible, stick to practical Lego effects. So rather than overlay a PNG of fire in the editing process, I wanted to figure out a way of making the candles flicker in camera. So for in the Easter story, if you remember, all the torches, they were official Lego flame pieces, and then I had a light source shining through the wall or from underneath the floor for when Peter's around the campfire, and that was what lit up these transparent Lego pieces. And then I'd move the flames a frame at a time, each frame, and move them a tiny amount, and that makes them flicker. And then we'll glow that up a bit in post, but for the most part, it's practical effects. So, yes, back.
I was wondering, when you do a scene with lots of characters like
Mhm.
the Palm Sunday one,
Yeah, yeah.
or I was even thinking about the water it's going up and
Mhm.
down,
Yeah, yeah.
and then these particle, I don't know if that is
Mhm.
foam or bubbles from the surface.
Yeah.
How do you keep track of which bit moves in which direction? Because I was thinking, I was trying to imagine myself. How do you remember which character's head was turning in which direction? Which arm was going where?
Yeah, yeah.
A way of notation?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so
If you put all that here, and you ever make a character go like this, for example, when you need to
yeah, yeah.
turn the head in one direction.
Yeah.
How do you keep track of all the water? Which
Mhm.
bits are supposed to be going up and
Mhm.
which down?
Yeah. So well, I'll start with the Easter one. So for the Easter one, and you will notice if you look carefully at my videos, you will notice an improvement in that kind of thing. So the Easter story, the Palm Sunday scene. In that one, I had a clockwork direction that I went round the minifigures in the scene. So I started with Jesus, and I have a set walking cycle that I do, and it's well, back then it was 4 frames, it's now 5 frames, but I knew which part was the part of the walking cycle that they were on, which part's the next one. So that was what I do for Jesus. And then for the rest of the characters, I just went round in a circle and moved them a tiny bit. And a lot of it is just tricking the eye, really. So for a lot of those characters, it's just movement, and I just tap them a tiny bit and move them slightly, and it's not specific movements that they're all doing, because there's too much for your eye to focus on anyway. For the water, again, it's just a bit of a trick to make it a lot simpler. The water was actually going around in a circle. So all the scenes with the water, there was this sheet of water that I made out of Lego, the flexible sheet that was connected together with Lego nets. And then underneath there were pillars under the water, and I just moved them round in a circle. But because the pillars were different heights, and because the clip was only 5 or so seconds long, you don't have enough time to notice that the waves are moving around in a circle. And then the white foam on top, I literally just flicked it around, scattered it randomly, and again, you don't notice because there's too much for the eye to take in. For some of my later, more complicated scenes, so the opening shot of the paralyzed man, where there was, I think, 13 different characters in that scene, and they were all doing very specific, very different things. So there was one guy sweeping, there was a couple of people picking up water from the well, there was a Roman centurion walking around, there were some people talking and so on. And in that case, there is a lot to remember, and for the most part, I do just have to remember it, and that's why animation takes a lot of concentration. So I have to really be, especially for a scene like that, I have to really be in the mood, really in a focus mode, and that's also why I can't stop halfway through a 7-hour animation, because otherwise I lose the focus. But that's also where my software Dragon Frame, which I use to do the animations with, comes in, because using that I can easily switch between frames. I can use what's called an onion skin, which means the previous frame is like on a slightly transparent layer in front of your current live view, which means you can see as you move the characters in the live view how much they've moved by compared to the previous frame. So that helps me keep track when I'm doing more complex scenes. So hopefully that answers your question.
You've lived all this in a year?
Well, I'd say probably about 2 years. Yeah, I'm self-taught when it comes to animation. I've obviously looked up a lot of tutorials online and got a lot of inspiration from other Lego animators on the internet. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, self-taught. So, yeah, yes. Yes, that's one of the next slides. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, so I've never done an official course. In terms of just being able to use a camera, that's something that I've been developing over even longer than the 2 years I've been doing animation. Because for all of my Lego projects, you have to build the model, but then you have to present it as well, and you have to do a nice presentation, especially when I'm entering them into competitions, because that is part of the judging, is the presentation. So that is something that I've been developing, being able to use a camera well, being able to take a nice shot, a nice setup, and that's something I've been learning for years and years now. But yeah, I've never done an official course in cinematography or stop motion or anything like that. And remind me the first part of your question. Social media. Mm-hmm. So we're on basically every one you can think of, probably. We're on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. We've just started a TikTok. We've not posted much there yet, but as I said, as we're expanding into social media more, we'll hopefully be posting there more. But there is, at the end, there will be a slide where you can get a link to all of our social media channels. So, yes, Tertia. Yes. So all our videos are they're automatically copyrighted by YouTube when you post them to YouTube, and on our website they have a copyright, and when churches download them they get a specific license for just use in the church, and yeah, just for a set amount of time. And it is very tricky to keep track of copyrights, especially online. We've had a lot of cases of people just downloading our videos and then putting their own logos on the videos and posting them to their own channels. And it's very tricky as a Christian ministry, because for one point they're spreading the gospel, but they're also stealing our stuff. So it's very tricky to know how to handle that sometimes, but our videos and our content is all copyrighted. Yeah. But one thing we are hoping to do in the future is get to the point on our YouTube channel. So at the moment on our YouTube channel, all our videos have a watermark, like 10 seconds into the YouTube video, to say, if you want to use this in your church, please purchase, so that any church with a conscience wouldn't show the YouTube video in their service. But we hope to get to a point with the YouTube channel where we're able to take off that watermark so that churches that aren't able to afford the video and just smaller groups that wouldn't buy one anyway are much more easily able to use it in group settings and use the videos as an evangelistic tool. So no, not at all. So the YouTube at the moment is for individuals. So it's for people to share the videos, to show to friends and families. It's only at in church services that you can't show the YouTube video. But as I said, we hope to get to the stage where even that isn't necessary and the YouTube videos are just free for anyone and everyone to use. So I think if that's one last question. Okay, very deep question. Two goats. Where they're? Are they related to goats? Yes, those would be the goats. Well done for spotting them. I think we've. Yeah, it's already 5:30. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. It's been a pleasure to come and talk here and tell you a bit about what we do. I've got a few prayer points here which I won't go through now because we've run out of time, but you can have a brief look. And then we've also got our social media channels. If you want to get in touch, there's my email and phone number, and then you can scan that QR code to get links to all of our social media channels. So I'll leave that one up. So yeah, thank you so much for coming, everyone.